All right. Okay, I think we're live. Hey everyone, welcome to the session. Thanks for coming in. Happy Sunday. Hope everyone's doing well. Let's see, one thing I want to mention, I'm using a different microphone today. It's an older mic that stopped working in the configuration, and now I think it's working again. So if there's any issues with the sound, let me know. And if at any point you lose video or the video freezes, I think it should be fine. First thing to do would be to refresh your browser page or refresh from inside the app. And then if that doesn't work, just say so in the chat and we can see what we can do. All right. So thank you everyone for joining me in this session. As always, I'm honored to be with you here in this time of overall sensitivity and uncertainty, and I look forward to sharing time with you in our sacred space together today. Okay. What I want to do today, we'll do basically the same format, which is we'll set sacred space in the beginning. And then we'll talk about an overall topic, and I'll keep the topic pretty short today because we have a lot of questions that I want to make sure we kind of clear the backlog on to get to all the questions you've asked in the past couple sessions. And the topic today will be the topic of, I don't know what you call it, like following basically this pattern that I've observed in my advisees where people are basically de facto following their bliss in the middle of this time of crisis and transformation. It's just kind of happening spontaneously, and this relates to golden thread and all the stuff we've been talking about. So I want to say a few words about that. We're going to spend most of our time on Q&A and actually get through Q&A today. There will be a bit of an exercise. I'll suggest we'll do one very short poem, and then we'll close from there. Okay, so we'll go ahead and start, and I will set sacred space. So this is a space that we are all creating together here, devoid of fear, threat, and control. In order for us to open to higher guidance from within our own selves. However, we know we receive that. A safe sanctuary space for us all to relax and surrender with no danger or threat, so that we can partake of the emotional nourishment, the spiritual nourishment that comes from being in sacred space together as a group. And in opening sacred space today, I will propose that we all follow the four principles of sacred space in terms of how we do it. The first is confidentiality, right? What is said and what happens in sacred space stays in sacred space. Because we're online and the video can go anywhere, the way we do that here is when you ask a question, if you ask a question, you anonymize it by just going into your profile and changing your username to Mickey Mouse, and then you ask your question. So that's number one. Number two is the principle of no threat, no controlling, no fixing, no tough love. We're here to hold space for each other so that we can be however we actually are, without the threat or worry that someone's going to come in and try and fix you or tell you how to be differently. Okay. So that combination of control and threat, if you don't do it the way I'm recommending, right? Read this book, right? And then fear of all of that is gone from the space that we're about to open. So that you can be afraid, anxious, happy, relaxed, however you are. And then whatever it is, without us even knowing how you're going to be ahead of time, right? Whatever it is, space will be held for that without any fear, threat, or control. control kind of intervening and moving in. The third is a corollary to that, which is no commerce. Because of no fear, threat, or control, nothing may be sold or recommended or suggested. We are here for your energy, not for the things you bring. Right? In other words, we're here for you. We're here for what you are, not for what you do or what you provide. Right? And that's a critical difference in sacred space. And then the fourth is no expectation of participation. So there's no pressure to do anything. The nourishment comes from the held space and your presence and attention, from what you are, not from what you do or provide. And so if you come and go, if you're like there and not really listening, but on your phone, then all that is that you need to be distracted. It's too much for you, and that's fine. And if the way you do that is to be on your phone or leave, make yourself a cup of coffee or whatever and ignore what's being said, that's okay. That's how you need to be. And the rest of us then hold space for you to do that. And we all hold space for each other to do that. Okay. And all of us here being together will tend to amplify that effect, which is why there's so much extra nourishment for us to partake of. So this is what I propose. And if you're not okay with this, that's cool. We will pause here to give you a moment to withdraw from the group. And then we'll catch up with you later outside in profane space. We'll still hang out. We'll still do stuff together. No worries at all. So even the point is saying, if you're realizing, this is not what I signed up for, or I'm not feeling it right now, you can withdraw from sacred space without any fear, threat, or control, right? Do it however you need to do it. Okay, so I'll just pause for a moment to let anyone step out of the group if they would like to. Okay. So for now, with the rest of us, we will move together into sacred space. So I hereby open sacred space. We're in it now together. And we all agree to basically follow the four principles: confidentiality, no fear, threat, or control, no commerce, no fixing, no recommendations, and no expectation of participation. Okay. So the first thing I want to do here is, I wasn't going to do a topic at all, but there's just some observations just with my advisees, just all around the world, just people I'm close to, that I wanted to share and just echo back to you, given all the stuff we've been talking about in the last few weeks about the golden thread and honoring the dead and all of these topics all together. And so it's this pattern that I've been seeing in my advisees. These are the people that I work with in my practice to help them with healing, and then with bliss, and then sometimes with meditation. And the pattern I'm seeing is that for most people in quarantine and lockdown right now, and my my advisees are all over the world, so I'm getting a sampling of like what life is like in Italy, what life is like in the rest of Europe and Asia. For most people who are not in the direct flow of the medical crisis, where they are just kind of off on their own, sheltering and basically going crazy in quarantine. For those of us who are in that situation, it's like time has stopped. It's like initially when we hit quarantine, there's like this flywheel of the machine, of the profane and sacred world, but the modern world, and an engine that's turning it. And the engine disengaged, and the thing was still turning, right? It still had momentum. We went into quarantine. We're like, oh, what should we do? What kind of mask should we wear? Et cetera, et cetera. And now as we sink even further into this quarantine, the sort of residual momentum of the wheel is starting to sort of dissipate. And the wheel itself is starting to sort of grind to a halt as well. This is like just energetic, metaphorical image. And so it's like time has stopped, right? There's no pressure to advance and get ahead in your career because like everything has stopped. Everyone has stopped. It's like if you are a bird in a flock of like 1,000 birds and, you know, you try to fly ahead, but the rest of the flock is just sitting there, right? And it's kind of pointless. So, because when the flock takes off, you don't know in what direction it's going to take. So there's no context for like how to even get ahead. You just kind of sit there with the rest of the flock and you're all just hanging out on Zoom, on social media, right? And because of this, because everything has stopped, it's like there is this level of silence we never even knew existed. It's like when we have a power outage in our home, right? Like a blackout or something. And the refrigerator loses power. And the little motor, right, that's constantly running in the refrigerator to keep it cold stops. And it's like this reverse realization where you're so used to hearing the hum of that machine, you stopped hearing it. So when it actually stops making noise, you're like, what? You notice it's not a sound you notice, it's the absence of sound where you didn't even realize there was a sound there and all of a sudden it's gone. And when it stops making noise, you sink into a deeper level of just realizing deeper silence and clarity. So now the wheel that has been spinning itself is starting to slow down, right? And the skies are clearing, the animals are coming back out. And there is this kind of deeper level of quiet. And so with a lot of people I work with, so healing, bliss, and meditation, and when we talk here about sacred space, it's funny because with this deeper level of silence, people have been reporting back to me, it is in a strange way, because, you know, the economy is still in shambles and all, we're worried every day. But when you step away from the news, because there's still a little sort of wheel with like, what are we doing and when are we going to reopen and everything, but you can't listen to that 24/7. So you, like, when you step away from that, people are reporting back to me that it is in a very strange way, so strange that it's hard for us to even admit. It is easier in many ways to claim and reclaim sacred space now, which is this kind of almost delicious irony, because it's in the time of crisis that we need sacred space even more than usual. And with the motor of the refrigerator off and this deeper silence, it's like this quality of sacred space has descended upon us. And when we do a session like this and we learn what sacred space is and what it is, it's like, oh, it's right here. It's right here. I already kind of have all the ingredients. And I just need to realize, do the final step and sort of put it all together. So our masks, as we've discussed in the past, our masks are coming off. And in the process of that, bliss itself is starting to reemerge, right? Like wildlife itself is starting to emerge. There's a wildlife in us that's starting to reemerge. We've called it in the past 自然, right? That Chinese word for nature, your natural pre-existing flow. And just like the silence and the wildlife, it has always been there in the shadows, but it is just easier to hear now that the noisy machine has stopped and the residual spinning is actually slowing down too. So people all around me, And they also have like these guilty feelings about it, because it's like the world's burning and I'm like coming more and more into my bliss. How do I feel about that? And I'm like, I mean, how does the coyote feel about like walking around the streets of San Francisco now? Is it great? I don't know. It's kind of strange, right? Because there's not a lot of garbage for it to eat anyway. So it's this very weird, surreal kind of thing. And so people are coming more and more deeply into their bliss, especially if they were in the middle of the process already. Not necessarily in action, because when you translate your bliss into your career changes or whatever, all of that, the flock is still steady. So not in actual action, but in like this internal cooking and refinement and redistillation and fermentation of like clarifying and clarifying. I think when stuff reopens, what I'm really going to focus on is this. You have that fabled kind of moment of pause. Moment of pause. I mean, put another way, think about like how, just check my Facebook Live here, make sure it's working. Think about how in the regular world, right, before a pandemic and everything, finances and everything else aside, right, the level of quiet you have now, the level of freedom from social obligations and all this stuff, think about how much you would have paid, right, to get to this state before. Right? You would have had to like fly to like Madagascar or Bali and like seclude yourself in an ashram or something just to have this level of almost like monastic quality of life. In some instances, I'm not saying it's like a silver lining, or I'm not saying that at all. I'm just kind of observing the quality of the space that many of us are finding ourselves to be in. And for some people, because the mask is off and bliss is coming forward, this zizaran, right, which is good and bad, like sort of delicious and painful, it is also pulling them deeper into healing. Because when the bliss channel starts to flow, if there are other things, wounds that you have that are blocking, it'll start pushing against those as well, right? The mask is gone, so the artificial thing you use to keep it back is, so it's coming up, and often it will impact against. And some of the questions today we'll see that against wounds and start to melt and heal and transform those wounds. And that's not a kumbaya thing. I mean, in many instances, it's very painful. It's very painful if you don't forcibly suppress it and you allow it to come through. So for bliss to really get rolling, right, it's coming up against, it's like water coming down a mountain. It's like hitting the next obstacle. And that can be painful at times, but overall, when you realize what's happening, it is kind of amazing. And so the whole topic of bliss is a whole longer thing I don't want to get into here, but what I will say here is that the key question of bliss is, at the end of the day, a question of desire. The question of bliss, your meaning and purpose in life, is, when you boil it down, an elemental question of desire. And the question of desire is, what do you like? What do you love? What do you desire? For no good reason. Right? It's the zizaran, it's the pre-existing inclination and desire within you, which cannot be explained because you didn't choose it and you didn't put it there. It was just there from your birth and even like a little bit before. In the sense, your deep desire, your zizaran, is itself a kind of acausal phenomenon. Right? It's a given, like any archetype, like the number 3, right? You can't prove the existence of the number 3. It simply is. So it is the given desire within you, as is, with no justification, right? And you cannot choose it. You cannot choose your bliss, which is part of what leads to all kinds of problems, right? And why you try to mask it. Because your bliss at the end of the day is not it is what we like. It is not, or very rarely, what we would like to like. Right? There are many things we would like to like because it's prestigious or wealth making or acceptable. All the reasons of the mask. But if we could choose our bliss, we would all choose to be like, I don't know, hedge fund managers, where you have the flow of bliss and you're making money and, sort of, the crowd is going wild, right? But you don't get to choose your bliss. And that is kind of the difficulty of it. But it is also what makes it so powerful, as literally a force of nature coming through you. Okay. So it's not what we'd like to like, but what we actually like. And that for some people is a very hard question to even ask, let alone answer, because of how constricting the mask actually is. And now, so with this whole pandemic thing, they are able for the first time ever to actually have a chance at having temporarily a deep enough quiet in their lives where they might actually be able to ask this question and hear the answer. And when the answer comes back, it will always come as a whisper. It's like suppressed nature, right? Where the coyotes and the dolphins and the canals of Venice start to poke through. And it reminded me of that line from the poem, the Robinson Jeffers poem from last session. When the answer comes back, it comes back like some girl's breathing who dances alone by the ocean shore, dreaming of lovers. That's what the answer comes back like, in a whisper. So in sacred space, this is the kind of thing you can hear. This is the kind of higher guidance you receive in a whisper from within you. And so we will talk about bliss in some of our questions today, but I just wanted to recognize it and acknowledge it here directly and openly. In the middle of all this crisis, right, there is beginning in many people the glimmering, the flowering of the golden thread of their bliss emerging. And I mean, it's just kind of crazy to me, right? This is the kind of exquisite beauty that can happen when you stop the machine of profane time, right? Nature re-explodes, and the nature in you that's around, the golden thread starts to re-explode as well. Now, again, don't take this as like, well, you better get on it and go after your bliss and, go get the prize. It's not like that at all, right? This is not a recommendation or fear, threat, or control. This is just an observation that I've seen in other people. And I would say it's not something you can accelerate. It's not something where you can say, well, I heard Artie say this thing, so I'm really going to try and find my bliss. You don't have to do that, right? It is happening within you. You don't have to lift a finger. Right? We don't have to invite the coyotes and the dolphins back into the Venice canals. We had no idea, right? I mean, if you asked any Italian, any Venetian, if there were ever dolphins in the canals of the city, they're like, that's outrageous. Never, right? But obviously there were. Right? I guess no one just ever wrote about them or talked about them. So when your Tzizaraan comes back, it will completely blindside you. So there's nothing to do, right? So there's no action. So don't worry. And for me, I'm still sitting with this and observing it and absorbing it myself. But this is what I'm seeing. And I just wanted to share this with you and then echo it back to you as well. Right? It's not good or bad. It's like the coyotes. It's just a phenomenon. Okay. All right. So that's it. That's all I wanted to say on the sort of topic of the week. All right. So now we have some questions. Let's get to some of these questions here. How are we doing on time? Okay. And these were posted from past sessions, so I'll need to read the questions so you know what I'm answering. So this question, would you please elaborate on the difference between sacred space and stillness falling asleep, and meditating. I'm finding myself drifting off to sleep, waking up and feeling good, enjoying myself doing whatever, music, reading, etc. The concern is that I'm following in a regular sleep pattern, more like a baby, a rock star, or a teenager who is up all night and sleeping in. Well, that doesn't sound too bad to me. It's funny for myself, with the sort of lack of structure of days, but still all the sort of work that I'm able to get done. I found that I've started napping in the middle of the afternoon, like around 2 or 3. I'll feel like taking a nap, and then with this around coming back and everything, I'm like, well, if I feel like taking a nap, why don't I just take a nap? And it's been very, I mean, it sounds stupid, but it's been very, very powerful for me. I mean, it's basically siesta, right? It's basically the sort of natural rhythm of the human sort of circadian rhythm or whatever. But I'm actually allowing myself to surrender to it and do it. And I'm a little embarrassed. I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with afternoon naps. So this may sound like really sort of dumb and obvious, but man, after an hour nap in the afternoon, you wake up and it's like you get 2 days in one. It's like the rest of the day from 4 p.m. onward is like a brand new day. So irregular sleep pattern, I think, I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to give any medical advice, but I mean, I'm having an irregular sleep pattern too, in the sense that I'm taking naps in the middle of the day. And so far, anyway, I kind of like it. So to answer your questions, meditation itself is a form of sacred space. Because to really meditate, you need to sort of not let go, not suppress the chattering voice, but to step back and watch it and let the voice chatter however it wants. Some styles are like, bring your attention back to the breath. I don't even say that. I'm just like, just watch. You need to watch the breath. You've got this organic process right in front of you, which is your chattering nervous mind. Your chattering nervous mind is itself a natural rhythm within you. So it's a perfectly acceptable candidate to watch and observe as an object of your meditation as well. Anyway, when you're watching it, to use our sacred space vocabulary, you are holding space for it. Right? This thing that's constantly clawing at your face, right? You're like locked in a telephone booth with it. You're finally stepping back and saying, you know what, I'm not going to fight you. You say whatever you need to say. You know, barf it out. And I'm gonna be here and hold space for you, basically in this 20-minute or 4-hour meditation, depending. I mean, once you get into meditation, it will feel good. It won't feel like a chore, and you'll go for hours, and you'll like wake up and you won't know what happened, right? And so, so when you hold space for the voice, you are holding a space which is devoid of fear, threat, and control. So you're not afraid of what the voice is saying. You're not threatening the voice to shut up or else. And you're not controlling it, saying, think good thoughts, not bad thoughts. Right? That's the sacred space of meditation. Okay. And so one of the ways I think about meditation and sleep is that you're awake and then you fall into sleep, right? So you like sink down into sleep. And in between wakefulness and sleep is like this sort of metaphorically speaking, this like 3-inch ribbon of like the twilight, the in-between between wakefulness and sleep. This is the, this is the mother lode, right? This is where it all happens. This is where you have dreams where you remember them. This is where you have flashes of insight. This is kind of the zone you're in when you're taking a shower and like these flashes of genius hit you. And so when you meditate, what you're doing is you are navigating down to the 3-inch ribbon. And instead of going through down into sleep, you go horizontally, right? You go along the line and you surf it. And that's, metaphorically basically what meditation is. And so, at least the way I teach it, right? So when you surf that line, just like in regular surfing, you can wipe out. And sometimes you'll wipe out and you'll fall on the side of wakefulness, and you'll wake up, you'll be nervous, you're like, I can't sit now. You just go about your day. And sometimes you'll wipe out and you'll fall asleep in meditation. And that's okay too. That's okay too. Right? So you set up to like surf for like half an hour, and you wake up an hour later and you don't even know how long you surfed. You wiped out at some point and you woke up an hour later. So instead of a half-hour meditation, you got an hour nap, right? Big deal, right? That's awesome. That's awesome. And the thing is, when I teach meditation, and if you set it up like that, there are these levels of sacred space that you created for yourself, where it's like you can't have a bad meditation. If you go in threatening yourself with this meditation better be as good and mind-blowing as the last one, then you're not going into sacred space. And the meditation will suck, which is okay. But when it's the disappointment and clenching when the meditation sucks, that actually ruins the experience. So if you're like, whatever happens, happens, then, magically, right, it always turns out to be a good meditation. And then generally with the different styles of meditation that are out there, I would just pick and choose. I would just try a little bit of everything. And the general guidance that I give people is you want to find a kind of meditation that actually feels good when you do it. And ideally, meditation will feel like surfing or sneaking candy, right? Or going out and sneaking a smoke, right? Ideally, meditation will not feel like, a righteous chore, like scrubbing the kitchen floor, right? I mean, all the culture on meditation being this like righteous, moralistic practice is from monastic culture of Japan, China, sort of, not really, but and certainly sort of, our all sort of European Western culture roots of Protestantism, where it's like you can only do things if they're good for you and if they're the right thing. This is the thing that like tightens the clench on meditation, that turns it into this like barren wasteland, right? Instead of like this garden of like exploding, coyotes and dolphins all around you. So the simple sort of benchmark is basically you want to do meditations that make you feel good, right? Generally, with all these practices, you should be feeling good while you're doing them. You should not be like forcing yourself at gunpoint to do them. And yeah, so that's how I think about it. And then the last note I wrote, I already said this, but so I'm not medical, right? But I like to sleep and wake as you please, especially if you're feeling good. If you're feeling good, that's all I care about, right? Especially if you're older in like the second half of life or thereabouts, right? And you have the leisure time. I mean, you can do whatever you want at this point. You paid your dues, right? I mean, as Hemingway's wife once said, like, who are we anyway, right? Like, you can do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. Baby, rock star, teenager, all great images. And for me, it's all circumambulation, and not all circumambulation is terrifying or painful. Some of it is, and some of it is just wandering and seemingly aimless and delicious and awesome. So when it's terrifying, be brave and, hang on. But when it's delicious, it's like, don't shortchange yourself, just enjoy it. That's what I like. That's what I like. Okay, so that's those are my thoughts, and thank you for sharing the question. Okay, let's do this one. Okay, hi again, and thanks for doing this. I wonder if you could talk more about how you drag yourself out of the profane right now, phones, emails, news, etc., and settle into a sacred space. I have the best of intentions, but resist so much doing the work. I consciously want to work at evolving. And this time of confinement is such a wonderful pressure cooker, but yet I'm not yet feeling the pressure. If we can choose to put the mask back on, couldn't we choose to turn up the heat? Thanks. Okay. So I love this question. Thank you for asking it. So here for me, in terms of dragging yourself out of the profane, when you think about the tone and vocabulary of this question, which is fine, it's very normal. It's dragging yourself out of the profane because you're like addicted to the profane. So that there's this forceful dragging out, right? So there's this image of being dragged into the sanctuary of the temple where it's like, if you're not feeling the need for the sanctuary, just let the guy hang out. Let the goat vendors smoke their cigarettes together. They're fine. When the next plague hits and they're like, oh my gosh, okay, fine. Come into the temple and we'll figure it out. So I'm okay with like being in the profane, right? And when you say I resist so much doing the work, I don't know exactly culturally where this, I think it was like some famous book or something, but people are always using this phrase, doing the work. And many of you know me by now. It's like, I hate that phrase. It's like, ideally, when you're doing the work, it will feel good. It won't feel like work. It will feel itchy and uncomfortable at times. Right? But when you realize this cut on your arm, it's like you can scratch it, but then the scar will like be there for another 3 weeks. If you don't scratch it, which is like ridiculous, right? It will heal faster. So you could say not scratching it is doing the work, but I prefer it's like I'm just choosing because I know I've been around this track enough times where it's like it makes me feel better to like just bear it and not scratch it. Because you always have a choice. You always have a choice. If you're like, I've done this 6 times and yet again, I can't control myself. I'm just going to scratch it off and it's going to make the healing process even longer. But it's like, if that's what you want to do, then that's okay. Right? Metaphorically speaking. I mean, there are the boundary lines of like, don't hurt yourself, don't hurt others. But I mean, typically it's a long way before we even get to those out of bounds lines. It's a long way. So for me, the gold standard is this. And this is I'm just answering your question. I'm not telling you what to do, right? It's just how I think about it. And then you kind of, you just, you take it or leave it, right? Whatever feels right for you. So for me personally, the gold standard is that you say to yourself, you don't have to do anything. That's the gold standard for me. You don't have to do anything, right? You want to be on the phone? Okay. You want to not do the work? Cool. You want to not evolve? That's all right. Right? And when you say to yourself, no, really, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to do a goddamn thing. If you want to just sit there, you can just sit there. And the minute you really sink into that, then, ta-da, you are in the sacred. Then you are in the sacred because you are in a zone of no fear, threat, or control. Right? How do I drag myself out of the profane? It's like fear, threat, and control. I know I should do the work, right? Hitting myself, but I resist it so much and I'm a bad healing advisee and I want to be better. I'm like, hopefully you're not getting that from me. Right? You don't have to do anything. People are like, oh, I'm sorry, I've been away from your advising sessions for like a year. And I'm like, I'm not nagging you. I mean, I'll email you every now and then. I'll email you every now and then in the profane, right? But yeah, you come and go as you please. Right? There's a natural rhythm of healing within you. That's why the online thing is so beautiful. Everyone, I'm just air traffic controlling everyone in and out. And the arc of whether it's months or years or both, that's cool. I don't know what it is, right? You don't know what it is. Let's just kind of like, let's just start, rolling and see how it goes. Now, when you say to yourself, you don't have to do anything, there's like a chief of police within you that will be like, well, that's outrageous. That's criminal. You can't allow that. That's, there's no law and order then. There's utter chaos. And when you say to yourself, I don't have to do anything, as a healing action, as a self-healing protective action, you're creating this sacred space of a temple within you. And the chief of police will be at the gate of the temple saying, well, this is outrageous. And you need to basically hold a boundary with your own part of yourself and say, I'm sorry, Captain, you need to step back. You are not allowed into the inner sanctum unless you would like to put your weapons down, take your badge off and come in as an individual. And then we will wash you and purify you and do the incense thing and then, give you your treatment as well. But you can't come in fully armed and in uniform, right? This is the sacred temple. We will all get struck by lightning, right? If we do that, if we allow you to do that. So in other words, you are actively protecting the zone of the sacred, where you are in a zone of no threat, fear, or control of any self-improvement regimen or demand for productivity. Or demand for wellness or mindfulness or self-care, self-help, self-compassion. There's no demand for anything. Then you're in the sacred. And you don't have to be in the sacred. If you don't feel like being in a realm of fear, threat, and devoid of fear, threat, and control, you're like, well, I truly think that it should be this, and this, or else. The language should or else, right? All those, the language of fear, threat, and control. And you're like, I just prefer to be in this mode because it makes me feel better. I'm like, that's okay. That's okay. Right from the beginning of these sessions, I'm like, most of us are 99% profane and 1% sacred. And if you are okay with that blend and mix, then great, carry on, no action needed. Right? It's whatever works for you. And so sitting in that sacred space that you create for yourself is its own nourishment, right? And if you want to keep drinking at that fountain, you need to sort of not need threat, but it's just logistically, the physics of it. The boundaries of the temple need to be maintained, right? So that you close your door, you tell people I'm going for a run and my phone is going to be off. So if everyone can not freak out for half an hour while I do my run, that would be great, right? So you push back in the profane just to make sure they know that there's a line, and if you cross it, there will be consequences in the profane. If you bang on the bathroom door while mama is taking her daily bath, you know that there will be consequences, right? Because when you're outside the bathroom door knocking, you're not in the sacred space, you're in the profane, and she will. So everyone knows that, right? You exercise control as needed in the profane to protect the temple. Okay. And for a lot of us, maintaining that boundary is not something we're used to doing. So we kind of suck at it, and we need to practice a little if we want to. Okay. And that's fine. So, but in the middle of a pandemic and quarantine, right, this global crisis where it is going to strain everything and everyone, it would be great to have the sanctuary of the sacred, which is why I guess I give these sessions in the first place. Right? When I do these sessions, it's like I'm teaching you to kind of sandbag your property, your home, before the flood. Right? If you didn't learn how to meditate 6 months ago, if you haven't been in my advisee for 2 years and healing or whatever, that's fine, right? There's just no time for saying, well, you should have started. I'm not saying, I never say that. It's there's just no time for any of that stuff. It's just get in here now. Let's do a crash course on the sacred and just like get it done. Okay. And I mean, from a high level view, right, the world was basically on fire already before the pandemic. And now it is just starting to fully sort of deconstruct in all these dimensions. And for those of us who have this experience with, you know, whatever you call it, let's just call it the golden thread, sort of superpowers that each of us has. This is a time for us to take care of each other using the golden thread superpowers that each of us has access to within ourselves, as much as we have already been able to get in touch with that within ourselves, right? So it's like, if you haven't developed this, or that's fine. Let's just grab what you have and let's just roll, right? And that's kind of where these sessions came from. I was talking to a friend and I was like, you know, we can do all this delivery of food and helping out and sewing masks and everything. But there's just something in me that's like, part of the crucible of this time will be that ideally we will all be called and find a way to contribute and help and support each other in a way that is specific to us and specific to our own bliss, actually. So when I sat and thought about, like, well, what is the thing that I would like to do that would be helpful? And what is the thing that basically only I can do, right? I mean, and other people can do sessions like this, but when I say only you can do it, it's like only you can do it in the way that you do it and for the people who resonate with you, right? When you add those additional elements in, you very quickly get to a point where, like, if you don't do it, no one else on the planet is going to do it. It's not going to get done. And then you have this extra surge of like, well, shit, I better just shut up and do it then. It's like, good, okay. So we just, you know, it's kind of this thing where if you have this feeling of like the golden thread and what you already love to do, you're like, just grab it and like go and see how you can sort of connect the dots and help if you want, and so if you're not in the pressure cooker, right, and you're like, I want to take the mask off, I want to turn up the heat, okay, I think I mean, there are many ways kind of into the labyrinth of circumambulation and healing and bliss. But if you're not feeling the heat of like pressure and confinement, one of the nicest ways to start is to start on the bliss side, which is like we talked about. And this will be the sort of exercise that we suggest too, which is to ask yourself the bliss question of like, well, what do I want to do? Like, I don't want to do the work. I don't want to evolve. I don't want to do whatever. It's like, all right, then, well, what do you want to do? And then the minute you say, well, actually, you know, at that whisper, right, like a girl's breathing, dancing by the ocean alone, dreaming of lovers. When that level of desire whispers to you, it's like, well, I want to do that. You'll know that that's the real sort of desire. When another part of you rises up and say, nope. we settled this when we were 7 years old. Nope, that's not for you. Right? For this other person, yes, but not for you. The minute that comes up and starts hitting you over the head, then you know whatever the whisper was, that's got to be the golden thread. Right? The thing that the profane, fear, threat, and control parts of you are constantly going after with scissors to cut, right? That's got to be the golden thread. Right? So when you like say it and like everything, you're like, I'm not sure. When everyone starts trying to tackle it, then you're sure. Then you build a temple around it. It's like, hang on, everyone. Everybody chill out. I'm just going to ask her some questions. Right? And they're like, oh, geez. Right? Now we've done it. And your job as the CEO, the king or queen of your inner queendom, is to sort of, you know, balance all that. Just like a real CEO, right? Is to balance all that. Okay, so those are my thoughts. I hope that was helpful, and thank you for sharing the question. All right, so let's do this one. So one more. You talked about extending the sacred space when you find you're in it, like in the car or shower. I often sit in the car, in the garage, reading or listening to a talk I'm really involved with. Is this sacred space if you're doing something like that? And the answer very quickly is yes, right? Yes, absolutely. You're in the zone of fear, threat, and control. You need to rush off to your next thing, and yet you're not. You're like, hang on a minute. I want to finish this. And it's like, well, you can look it up later and continue the podcast later. And it's like, but I don't want to. Right? I want to finish it now. I don't want to break the golden thread. I don't want to break the sacred space. And right there, your muscles are like flexed and you're holding open the temple. Okay, so it's fabulous. And this touches on a larger topic, but fairy tales, right? And myth, when you hear stories being told and you get engrossed, and even popular movies too, Netflix, whatever, it depends on the show, not intellectual conscious shows versus stupid shows, but it's not that kind of dichotomy, but even comedy shows, even like The Office or Parks and Rec or whatever, right? If they put you into the zone, even for 20 minutes, where you're free of fear, threat, and control, and that's the beauty of comedy, right? And you feel inspired, then that also can count as sacred space as well, right? Part of the numbing of popular media, right, is that you like, leave your cares at the door for a while, right? You get a break from your cares. There's a numbing aspect and there's a sacred space aspect as well. And the numbing aspect is because it's TV and it's sort of actively putting noise and ideas in your head, even as it's like putting you in a space of devoid of fear, threat, and control. So it's like pseudo sacred space because you are getting a relax from that, but there's also not a lot of bandwidth for the golden thread to be noticed. You can't hear the whisper of the girl on the ocean shore. Right? So that's where it gets kind of a little bit tricky technically. But something like a fairy tale, which is not authored, right? So like Hans Christian Andersen, no, because it's all like biased by his own sort of wounds and everything. But something like the Grimm brothers tales, where they weren't written by Jakob and Wilhelm, they were collected from the folk, right? Folk tales from the people of northern Germany. Some of those tales are like tens of thousands of years old, like the sort of story fragments trace back that long. And for a story that has lasted that long, you know that it is a reflection of something very deep within the human kind of system. Which is why when you read fairy tales, they are like these like time-tested collective dreams. And when you get them read properly, like interpreted properly in a way, you get all of this insight, right? So you're engrossed, you're in the sacred space of the fairy tale, and then boom, the golden thread can hit you there as well, because they are designed to do that, right? They're like almost like operating manuals of the human spirit. So that totally counts, and that's great. All right, so let's do this question. Okay, hey Artie, as a part of my journey to get in touch with my Ziran, my Bliss, which began with you about 3 years ago, I have since become an addictions counselor. Good job. Thank you for doing that. Congratulations. At the treatment center where I work, I'm struck by how much fear, threat, and control, this is at the addiction treatment center, is used to enforce the right behavior, at least outside of therapy sessions and in the community of the house. So this is like among the therapists and the staff itself. In fact, I'm starting to think of my counseling sessions as sacred space, absolutely, where love, nurturing, and surrender are called for, or at least I'm feeling called to that. Unfortunately, that kind of space holding does not fit with the therapeutic approaches the center and the other counselors embrace. So I'm pretty sure I will have to move on to some other way of doing my work after I gain a bit more field experience. So here are the questions I'm asking myself this week. Isn't therapy kind of like a sacred space? Yes, absolutely. Is it appropriate to look at it that way, or impossible, perhaps? Your thoughts? So this question touches on a kind of vast discussion that I'll spare you the gore, right? But I'll try to give you a thumbnail of it. And that is that, so yes, therapy absolutely can be a kind of sacred space where, and we have the sense for it, where there's like, patient, caregiver, physician-patient confidentiality that's protected by profane law also, right? And where all these sort of rules of ethics and code of behavior of what can go on in the therapeutic sort of setting. So ideally, right, therapy, all it is sacred space. And where we run into trouble with, just frankly, I'll just call it like the business of modern therapy, is that modern Western science is a realm of curing, not controlling, not healing. Curing, not healing. And there's nothing wrong with that. But for those of you who are into like history of medicine, it is a realm of Hippocratic curing, not Asclepian healing. And there is just a world of difference between those two. The approach of curing says, if you have, a hurt elbow, we will focus in on the elbow and just hit it with everything, right? Elbow being like a metaphor for like an emotional one. So talk therapy, pills, PT, occupational therapy, everything to like get the elbow back on track. And the tendency will be to focus on the localized point of it and fix it so that you can maintain the status quo of your life, right? And we can get you back to work. So the focus is on maintaining the status quo of the patient's life and on continued productivity in the current role that patient is in, which makes perfect sense, especially in this country, where healthcare is funded by employers. So if I'm the employer and I'm paying for the healthcare of my employees, then it stands to reason that what I really care about is that these employees, you fix them, you cure them, and they can get back to work to continue working with me. So that's the curing world. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. The healing question is different. The healing question says something more along the lines of what is the matter here? Right? What is going on here? For those of you who have done my fairy tale mythic series, when I do the Fisher King story, the Celtic sort of myth of the Fisher King, the healing question is, what ails the king? Right? That is the healing question. It's not how do I get the grail? How do I sort of, defeat the monster? Right? The healing question is the grail. But the actual grail in the Grail Castle even can't heal the king because it must be asked by another part of you, purely out of instinct, what ails the king. So that is the healing as opposed to the curing question. The curing question is like, what do we need to fix? And the healing question is like, what's up? What's going on? Okay, and it's a subtle sort of difference in center of gravity. So the healing question with the elbow would be like, why is your elbow in pain? right? And this is a stupid analogy, but it would be like, well, I'm a tennis player, and it's like, and you don't say, aha, tennis elbow. You say, okay, well, tell me more about that. And I'm totally making this up, right? So this is going to be ridiculous, but it's like, well, why do you play so much tennis? I play so much tennis because, and then it turns out there's like trouble in the marriage, and like you're looking for soothing, and you used to drink and you don't drink anymore. You just play tons of tennis, right? So it's like, the curing standpoint would say, well, here, take some ibuprofen and call me in the morning, and try to hit more of a forehand, not so much of a backhand. And the healing question, which is a huge can of worms, right? And costs a lot more in labor cost and overall cost of care, right? And the employer is like, I'm not responsible for your life, right? I'm already paying you a good wage for the work you're doing for me. My job is to like just get you back on the line so you keep working. Right, so I'm not blaming the employer. The employer is not in a sacred relationship with the employee, not in this society anyway. Right, and so it's just like, it's all profane, it's all transactional. And so when you're in this curing realm, curing is more controllative, if I can use that as a word, controllative. Almost you could say profane, right? I don't want to sort of disparage it, because the power and the success of modern Hippocratic science-based, physical symptom-based medicine in the West has been fabulously successful, right? Saving hundreds of millions of lives, right, over history. So there's nothing bad at all to say about it, but it's simply one half of the sky. The other half is Asclepian. And Asclepian healing was like, it was all dream reading, for crying out loud. Right? You would go in, you would sleep in the Abaton overnight until you were called to the Tholon, which was actually a labyrinth. I've actually visited the 3-circuit underground stone labyrinth. Actually, this past October in Greece, I kind of scooched closer. I almost got to climb down into it, but then the guard caught me and whistled me away. Much to the shock of my guests, right? I was just like, oh, I really want to like get down in there. And you would wander around circumambulating in the labyrinth with about an ankle deep sort of flow of fresh spring water and live non-venomous snakes, completely pitch black. No entrance. You would be lowered down in a ladder. And then after 3 days, you would pass out, have hallucinations. This is what they think happened. And then Asclepius, the god of healing, would come to you and tell you what to do next. And so anyway, in the modern sort of therapeutic realm, it takes its cues from Asclepius, because you're in talk therapy and you're just like you're letting them start wherever they want to start. But the outer container, right, is all profane. It's being controlled by this profane world where it's like employer funded, and the focus is on money, return on investment, and outcomes. CBT, right? CBT is like tested, clinically proven, and it's like, well, why is it clinically proven? Because it yields the outcomes that we are looking for. Well, what are the outcomes you're looking for? Well, if they were here and they fall to here, we want them to, excuse my language, get the fuck back up to here, right? With no question as to whether this is the right path of your life, no question as to whether this is a mask, and no question whether this current status quo of life you're living right now is like trampling on your golden thread, every single morning when you get up. Heave yourself out of bed and go to work again, right? And in the profane sort of world of curing, they're like, we don't cover that. That's outside of our scope. And I'm like, that's totally fair. That's totally fair. But the problem is there's no other part of society right now that does take care of that. And so it's, well, you get the society that we're in, which I love. I love the world as it is without condition, and parts of it are on fire. So I like run and try to help, So CBT is a kind of thing where it tends to tell you how you should think. Right? It's like, well, that's not really a positive thought. Let's like train you to get back to a more positive thought and less of a negative thought, which works beautifully because it tells you, and it gets you back to the outcome that we want, which is, get back on the treadmill and keep going. But as, the question of CBT trying to get you in as gentle and, compliant a way to think the way you're supposed to be thinking is a realm of control, right? And fear. Because God help you if you get CBT for like 3 or 4 weeks and you fail, there's nothing after that, right? And the whole practice of therapy, by my observation, itself is profane because all of this fear is imposed on the practice of therapy itself. Because basically what I'm saying is, when your focus is just on curing and not asking the fuller healing question, which is fine. Okay, we're in a transactional capitalist society, that's the way it is. But when that's your focus, I don't care how you do it. I want you to get my man back on the field and scoring goals for me. I don't care how you do it, right? But it better be fast and it better not cost a lot. And if you, with your talk therapy, right, 100 years of Freud and Jung and Adler, right, if that doesn't work, then you're out. Or if it works, but it costs too much because it's like 10 weeks of like paying this therapist to sit in a room for an hour each week. When I can get the same or similar results by giving him a $5 pill every week, then I'm going to go with a pill, right? Because it's cheaper for the same outcome, right? Whatever voice or whatever thing was trying to get out from behind your mask, you like put the pill and you like nuke the shit out of everything. And I'm not saying pharma is bad. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying in this metaphor, when you're in the sort of realm of the therapist, in this sort of profane landscape, battlefield, you have to answer for the curing question, not the healing question. And also at the same time, if you don't cure as cheaply and effectively as this pill, which is your competition, right, then you're completely, you're out of a job, right? So this entire temple is under threat, fear, and control as well. Okay. So your stuff better work, or else I'll pull your funding. And even if it does work, right, your competition is the entire pharmaceutical industry. And if they can come up with a pill that does what you do for 1/10 of the cost, then I'm going to go with the pill, and you're out, right? You're out because a pill has no labor cost. So long story short, in today's world, it is a tough slog to be an actual therapist. So I feel your pain. And what I love is that it's your bliss, it's your golden thread that led you into this. And it's your golden thread that is now leading you back out. So you will find another way, but this experience that you've had with modern, Western, kind of institutionalized therapeutic practice and delivery is going to be priceless. I don't know how exactly, but it just like, you've gone through this part of a circumambulation. Just from me, I look at these patterns all day long. I work with like thousands of people on this. It's just like, yeah, you've suffered, hopefully not too much going through this, but it's in your bones now, right? When I say, like, given your experience, that's in your bones now. When I say healing versus curing, your reaction is probably like, shit, that's what it is. But now you've got it. And however you solve it, by following your own golden thread, you will come up with this gorgeous, brilliant, exquisite solution. And, it's exciting. It's exciting. It takes circumambulation, but, the whole point of this is that this stuff is organic. We're living beings. We're not machines. This stuff takes time. The patient's stuff takes time. And the therapist, the caregiver stuff takes time because they're a hero on a journey of circumambulation and discovery as well. So everyone just gets sacred space, ideally, to like do what they need to do. Okay, so those are my thoughts. I hope that was helpful, and thank you for asking the question. All right. Okay, this question. So, hey, Artie, thank you for doing this. So, both my parents are ill. I'm a doctor, and so are they. And I'm treating them over the phone because there's no place in the hospital for them there. And we don't live in the same country, and I can't get to them. And she says, I'm really struggling with switching and choosing between the masks of daughter to the doctor and back and forth with everything falling down. I need the doctor mask, but it keeps falling off. I don't know which mask to choose, or should I choose one at all? Since regardless, it's they, my parents, who pay the price for my uncertainty. Okay. So basically, she's a doctor and she's treating her parents over the phone over long distance as their daughter and doctor at the same time. And there's a struggle of like, what do you do? So for me, thank you for this question. I feel this very deeply. I mean, the first thing I want to say is I just want to take a step back with this thing you said in the last sentence, because it's like, whichever mask I choose, one or both or none, it's them, it's my parents who pay the price for my uncertainty. And the first thing I want to say, in sacred space with no fear, threat, or control, my just heartfelt reaction is pay the price, right? No. Not pay the price. You are their daughter, right? They are so lucky to even have you in the first place, right? You are the blessing, period. So you don't need to do anything, right? You don't need to do it. If you never called them again, it's like they are blessed to have you as a daughter, especially during this time. I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, but for me, if I thought I was going to die, well, okay, it's fine if I die. My kids better be okay. Okay, so so for you, the number one thing is, and I speak as a parent, right, as well. And I'm positive I speak for your parents as well when I say the number one priority is you take care of you first, and you are not any price, right? You are the golden blessing of their lives. So that's number one. That's number one. That's number one. Okay. Now, that having been said, now let's go on from there. As the golden blessing, just I mean, given that, I'm just like, just do the best you can. You switch back and forth, doctor and daughter, because you are both to them, right? And they want you as both, right? And so, it's messy and it's not clean. And so what? I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic anyway. Everything's messy and not clean. They need you with your doctor superpowers because, they need your help and treatment to help them stay alive. But frankly, speaking as a parent, if there's a chance that I'm only going to be around for a limited time, days, weeks, or months, then also I want the doctor, but I also want as much time with my daughter as possible. Right? So there is no right answer. But what I can tell you, and because they want both, you want to be both, and they definitely want both as well. Right? And it's not them paying the price for your uncertainty. It's like they're uncertain, you're uncertain because the whole situation is uncertain. And so, and you're a blessing that you're even their daughter. The fact that you're also a doctor and can take care of it, that's just like blessing on top of blessing on top of blessing. So you're not doing any harm. You're the extreme opposite. So as a result, I can tell you that whichever mask you're wearing them well, wearing them badly, switching back and forth too often, not often enough, you are a blessing. There's no scenario where you're costing them a price. So just so try your best, but at the same time, don't worry. Right? Your very existence assures their comfort and relief and legacy. So, and I say that as both a child and also as a parent. Okay, well, those are my thoughts anyway. I hope that was helpful, and thank you for asking the question. Okay. Okay, let's do this question. So, hey again. These talks are provoking so many questions as can you encourage the transformation to happen, maybe even without the pressure? Okay. Also, I'd really like to take the course, okay, my healing course, but my resistance is such that I never get around to sitting down and doing the work. So these echoes, right, of resistance and doing the work from a couple questions back. Any thoughts on getting past the fear, threat, and control that block me from even getting started here? Listening to these sessions while taking long walks has piqued my interest, but I'm struggling with sitting. Okay, so two things here. Thank you for asking the question. So number one, to answer your first question, yes, of course, you can jump into the flow of the circumambulation of the healing anytime you want. As I said with the other sort of advisee, the person who asked the question, if you're not feeling fear and pressure or of a challenge or the wound of a some emotional wound that needs to be healed, then I would start with the bliss side. I mean, if the golden statue's right there and there's no like guards, I mean, you could be a little bit suspicious for booby traps, but I would just start going for it. Right? And if something starts firing arrows at you from the side, then we'll deal with that when we get there. Right? That's why bliss goes into healing, back into bliss, back and forth forever, in this like very productive, fertile churning of the pistons back and forth all throughout your life. It never ends. Right? That's a feature, not a flaw. It's exciting. And then your question with, okay, my course. So we're in sacred space. So I'm not going to extol the virtues of like any course I teach, right? So there's no commerce. So done, full stop there. But also I will say, around this thing of like doing the work and my resistance, I'll echo something I said earlier, which is you don't have to do anything. Right? You don't have to take any course from me or anybody. And I'll say that in sacred space and out of sacred space because it's the truth. You don't have to do anything. And you're like, well, I want to, but I'm resisting. I'm like, that's okay. That's okay. Right? Any tips on getting past fear and control and threat? Yeah. Here's my suggestion for getting past fear, control, and threat. Don't threaten yourself. Ideally, this is just my idea. I'm not forcing you, right? But one way you would get past fear, threat, and control in terms of going into the healing work is, my suggestion would be to not threaten yourself with being, I'll just make this up, with being an unhealed loser, a not diligent, healing, wellness conscious person if you continue resisting and you don't take my course, right? In other words, don't threaten yourself to even take my course or any course in the first place, right? Because even honestly, it just makes my job harder. So you threaten yourself to take my class, and you come in and you're coming in with this whole full head of steam of like threat. So now I'm here and I better do a good job. And everyone says Artie's great. So if even Artie can't help me, then I really am the biggest dunderhead of the class, aren't I? Right. So when you come in like that, it's like, you're making my job harder to begin with. And we all know I'm lazy, right? We all know I'm lazy. So I'm totally teasing you. What I mean to say here is that you don't have to take my course. You don't have to do any work to evolve or improve yourself. You don't have to do a gosh darn thing, because the reality is, and I say this outside of, we're in a sacred space, right? This is free. Nobody's paying to be here. The reality is, you are already perfect as you are, right? That's the reality. Now, I don't say that very often because it's like a jump across, it's like a big leap forward that you eventually get to on your own, but it's a lot for someone to absorb, and it just typically will just bounce right off people because, so I don't bother. But the core reality is that you already are perfect as you are. Right, in the last session when we did the topic of honoring the dead, so it's like you have the golden thread never dies, your connection to the golden thread never dies. So how are you not the golden thread? Okay. And so so you are the golden thread, which means you already are perfect as you are. So you don't have to do anything. Right? Out of fear or threat. Out of fear or threat. Now, after you're like, I don't have to do anything. If I'm resisting, that's okay. And what will typically happen is when you stop resisting, like unclench, and you'll start to have some curiosity about like why you're resisting. Instead of saying, oh, I know I'm resisting because I always do this. That's like, it's like the battle, right? When you're like, no, it's okay that I resist. So I'm not gonna sign up for anything. Like, it's in the middle of a pandemic. I have all this free time and I'm going to do exactly nothing. Thank you very much. And I'm like, good. Then you relax. You're actually in a little bit of sacred space. And then what happens is wonder and curiosity start to come up as well. Automatically. You're not doing any work. You don't have to do anything. They come on their own. And just like coyotes. Nobody drew the coyotes in with bait. They just show up on their own. Right? So there's no threat. And you start to have wonder and curiosity around, for instance, why am I resisting? And when you learn more about why you're resisting, you learn like a ton about yourself. The resistance is valid, which is a whole other, I won't get into that. And long story short, at the end of the day, you may find you come to a place where it's like, I'm actually curious about something like a course, like me or anybody else. And it's curiosity, not threat. Right? It's enthusiasm, not fear. Right? So in other words, you end up doing a program or reading a book or whatever, not out of fear, threat, or control, but because you feel moved at some point out of pure nerdy curiosity and enthusiasm. Right? You start ripping through books because you're like, oh yeah, that connects the dot, that connects the dot. It's like exciting, it's nerdy. People are like, what do you even, it's like that poem of Follow the Thread. It's like people will ask you what you're doing and you have to explain about the thread, but it's difficult for them to understand. Okay. So yeah, my answer to you is don't worry, you don't have to do anything. Right? I don't care if you've heard this is powerful or it'll be good for you. I mean, anyone who says, oh, this is good, you should try it, there's an implied threat, because if you don't try the Artie stuff, then, you're less than. Right? Oh, no, I didn't mean to say that. I was just trying to be helpful. Right? You're trying to be helpful. And if I refuse your help, then I'm an idiot. Right? That's why in sacred space, we don't even make recommendations. And even when I say stuff, I'm not like, I never say this is what you should do. I'm just saying this is what it makes me think. But I don't know if it'll fit for you. Right? You have full sovereignty. You decide what fits for you. And whatever you decide, if you're like, I have resistance, that's why when you say I have resistance to do the course, I'm like, hooray, then don't do it. Right? Don't do it. Because at the end of the day, for me, the most important thing for me to have you know is that you always retain your sovereignty and power. You always retain your sovereignty and power. Which is why people will come to me and say, oh, you know all this stuff, you're so wise, just tell me what to do. And I'm like, I don't know what you should do. I'm not on your inner board of directors. I do not have a vote. right? I'm a consultant and I can help you sort out your decision-making processes within you. Well, what is the outcome of that decision-making process? Will you take my course? Will you not take my course? Will you stay in your relationship? Will you not stay in your relationship? I have no clue. Right? And the most sort of honest thing I can do is to continue pushing your sovereignty back onto you. Because it is your own sovereign move to like give me your sovereignty and just say like, tell me what to do. Right? And that's just not how I roll. Right? I don't want your sovereignty. Right? The magical thing for me is to like for you to keep your sovereignty, and then for me to almost like continue spotting you like a trainer, right? Keep your own sovereignty. And then for me, like the ultimate bliss moment, I mean, all of this is my bliss, right? But the ultimate bliss moment for me is when you do your healing and your circumambulation, and it spins to this point where like you are in fully the flow of your bliss, and the rocket takes off of your bliss, right? And everyone can see it, right? And then that's when I get to have my moment, and I say, you see that rocket? You see that rocket of this person, right? That rocket, me. I cleaned the bathrooms on that rocket. Yeah, me. That's my payoff. That's when I get to say like, you know, I was a part of that. I had a small part of that. You know, it's like, that's my baby. That's my rocket going up. So long way of saying, you do whatever you want to do. You do whatever you want to do. That's my feeling. Okay, so I hope that was helpful, and thank you for sharing the question. Okay, so what's the next? Okay, so this question. As a perfectionist, trained to spot every shade of wrong, first in herself, then everywhere, sees a possible bliss path between the words. This is from the poem last week. If we were strong enough to listen without divisions of desire and terror, then given the opportunity to see just the good, and then tripping on the rock of suspicion. Right, so now, so the question is, so now that I want to see the good in myself and others first, I honestly don't know how to tell if I'm hearing a legitimate safety alarm suspicion. In my head, like, you're worried I'm too gullible. I'm too open to like stuff in the profane world, right? So is it a real sort of thing I need to protect myself from, or is it just my same old like overactive critic in action, right? In other words, when am I offering the benefit of the doubt as my remedy, and when am I just being an idiot? Okay, so you're never being an idiot. Next question. No, just kidding. So first of all, you're never being an idiot. Second of all, so here's the thing. So I love this. Thank you for asking this question. So when you say I'm seeing the good in others first, even so, the insidious thing here, right, is like I'm over controlling. I'm too perfectionistic, and that's it. I've heard these. I'm going to turn over a new leaf. You know, I'm going to do this right. Finally, since I've been doing it wrong the whole time, perfectionist, right? So now I'm going to turn over a new leaf, perfectionist, and there's going to be a new sheriff in town, perfectionist, right? And this is okay. We all do this. I do this too. And we're going to have a new rule. We always see the good in others first, or else. Oh, and by the way, we better do it right, because we better not mistake the false signals, because sometimes we could be really doing it right, or sometimes we could be being an idiot, right? So like the background of this is that the bully protector, the one who held the whip, did a head fake and said, oh, that's the way the wind is blowing this week. Okay, so let's do that, and I'll still be in charge of compliance and whipping, right? So we thought we were going in that direction. Oh, that was the wrong direction. Oh, we're always so like crappy. So now we know we need to go in this direction, and here I am. I'll continue whipping for us to go in the right direction now. And it's like, okay, dude. So, and I'm talking to the inner whip holder, right? So we love you. You're doing a good job. You're not getting fired. You're not getting fired. What I would like to do, if you would be okay with trying this, is I would like you to put down the whip. So just I'll hold it. Don't you can have a backlit. I'll hold it, and it's like the whip. and the idea is that you could say, I only see the good in other people. I mean, that's wonderful. That's lovely, but it's still a rule, right? And if it's a rule, it requires a whip. And the sacred is just a zone of no whip. No whip. Yeah, it's crazy to have, you can't have your whole life without any whip. When I go out and I buy the next goat to bring from the goat vendor to bring into, I'm still going to haggle with him, right? He's not going to overcharge me. Or I'll be like, hey, you overcharged me last time. Like, I'm gonna write a very strongly worded online review if you overcharge me again. All right, so the profane, all the rules, fear, threat, and control still apply. It's just when you're in the sacred, there's this limited zone. Could be 1% of your life, could be 99% of your life. You design as you see fit, right? Season to taste. But in that zone, there's no whip. No whip. So for me, the first rule for me, see, even in my notes, I wrote the first rule for me. So I use the rule again too. Right? So we all do this. We all do this after healing, which is okay. I'm okay with whatever is in me. However I am, good, bad, ugly, because this is the zone of no whip, right? So I'm okay with however I actually am. Oh, and the perfectionist, the guy who, like, while I was talking just now, he grabbed the whip again and he's like, I point to him and it's like, you, the guy who just took the whip back without my permission, I'm okay with you too. And he's like, and I'm like, I'm okay that you just did that. I would prefer if you would stop, but even if you don't stop, I'm okay with it. In other words, I love every part of me without condition. The thing I'm whipping, I love without condition. And also the whipper, who's like completely out of line, right? But if you're completely out of line, I'm going to pull you aside, give you some notes, give you some direction on the next scene we're going to film as an actor, right? But you don't lose any love. Right? I don't love you any less. I love you without condition. You're a part of me. Right? I don't love my lungs only if they're good lungs. I don't love my liver only if it's a good liver. I don't love my kids only if they're good kids. I love them without condition. So the inner whipper, he's there. He's showing up 6:15 every morning to do his job. It's not like he's like working, he's not like he's getting like paid for nothing. He's working hard for you, right? He's just doing kind of not quite the right thing. But if you have a VP who's like not doing the right thing, that's kind of on you as CEO, right? You're the one who has to manage. And you will, and you are. And so a corollary to that is, once I am okay with all parts of myself unconditionally, then we can start to coordinate without fear, threat, and control. It's like, well, how do we want to? And I'll get to that in a minute. But the quick corollary is that for those of you who've done my stuff, this is in day 7 of 7-day healing, right? The outer world reflects the inner. And I won't explain that here, but the outer world reflects the inner. So what that means is, like, when you have this unconditional acceptance of what you are, then the outer world reflects that too, right? I mean, the outer world is on fire. there's injustice, there's pain, there's suffering. And that was before the pandemic. And now the pandemic, all the sort of like things, rifts in society are being, people are dying, people are living in fear, like economic insecurity, food insecurity, all this stuff. And you kind of have a choice there. You can say, tisk, 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 bad world, this is awful, we need to like improve it. Otherwise, I roll, and you're basically shaming and shitting on the world for not being perfect. Or you can be like, and that's a reflection of how you talk to yourself, right? Or you can be like, all right, well, I mean, what can we do? But it's not in an attempt to fix anything, right? It's from this feeling of like, I mean, for me, I'll just say, just like with my lungs and my liver and my children, I also love the world without condition as it is. Right? The world is like our mother, right? So I love the world as it is without condition. She doesn't have to be a good world for me to love her. Right? I mean, she doesn't have to be a healed world and a just world for me to love her. I love her without condition. And then when I find that, she is on fire, then I rush over and it's like, Mom, what's going on? What, how do we, what do you need me to do? Right. And then we just kind of figure it out from there. So back to your question then, if we were strong enough to listen without divisions of desire and terror, and that's the beautiful thing. So when you listen to the hunger of the cities without fear, threat, and control, and you just hear it, and you love the city without condition, and you hear it's hungry, so it's like, well, how do I feed you? Then you hear the voice, because the part after that was, if we were strong enough to listen without divisions of desire and terror. I can't recite the poem, but you get to the point where you get to the girl's voice, right? Clean as a child's. Right, even the voices, the hunger-smitten cities, and the sickness-driven nations would be heard as the same voice. The title of the poem is Natural Music, as the same kind of natural music, clean as a child's, or like the breathing of some girl dancing alone by the ocean shore, dreaming of lovers. And that whisper that I spoke about in the beginning, that is the whisper of the golden thread. So translated into what you're describing. So the first thing is, I'm okay with whatever is in me, good, bad, or ugly, the whipper, the whippy, I'm good with all of it. Nobody's doing everyone's trying their best, actually, right? They're just not, there's a question of coordination, not of intention, right? So it's like, okay, so everyone's trying their best. I love everybody without condition. So now just come in, team huddle, let's just figure out how we want to do this better, right? Nobody's in trouble. No one's going to get fired. So now that you've done that first part, the second part then is, and this is where the voice, not listening without divisions of desire and terror. Then the second part, the girl's voice, is now that we're huddled together and no one's like worried about getting fired or whatever, like, okay, folks, like, what do we actually want? Now that I'm okay with how I am, what do I actually like and want? In other words, once you take off the mask, you're like, well, everyone's stressed about what the mask is making me. Now the mask is off. I'm not afraid to take off or even put on the mask, actually. It's fun to put it back on, and not scare people. Right? Even Superman dressed up as Clark Kent just to not freak people out. It was done out of love, not out of fear. Now that I'm okay with how I am, what do I actually like? Now I take the mask off. It's not just the mask, it's what is underneath the mask. And it's like, who the hell even? You look in the mirror and you're like, whoa. You kind of look familiar, but whoa, we haven't spoken in a while, right? So it's like, now that I'm okay with whatever is behind the mask, now I take off the mask. I can actually see myself without divisions of desire and terror. And I can ask myself, well, how am I actually doing? What do I actually like and want? Right? The girl by the seashore, she's dreaming of lovers. Tell me more. Right? What is your dream of your life? And we're all like this. We're all like this. And the hardest part is when you've been eating prison food for 30 years, you don't even remember what you like anymore. Caviar, what is that? I don't even remember what a thing called caviar is. And this then is its own phase of the process, the healing bliss circumambulation journey, which, to put it in words, is to validate your own desire enough so that it even feels safe enough to poke its head out again. Because we're in the middle of like emotional World War III within you. When you finally quiet everything down and the mask comes off, your actual desire comes out again. So you can even see it fully for the first time. This alone, for some people, for me, I mean, can take months. Because your true desire is like, I'm not going out there. Screw it. You go first. We tried when we were 7. We tried when we were 17. We tried again when we were 25. 35, we almost blew our lives up and we said no. And now 42, it's like, they're calling us again. I don't know. You think it's safe this time? I don't know. Forget it. So it takes a while, right? And yeah, so when you put the whip away, that is the thing. Let me see. What else? I wrote a lot here. What else did I write here? Yeah. So we talked about this. Like, it's what you actually like, not what you're supposed to like, not what you would like to like. Because if you liked what you were supposed to like, life would be a lot easier, right? Like with men or women, right? There's often a kind of man or woman, like a partner, you're supposed to like. And then there's the actual kind of person that you actually like. And sometimes those don't overlap. Right. So there's like this fear of falling short of the expectations of what you're supposed to like, the kind of partner you're supposed to have in your life that will actually mess with your life decisions. So in other words, you could so if let's keep it simple. So if you were like a straight cis woman, right? You're like, you could be with a guy who like checks all the boxes, but for whom you don't actually feel any desire for. Like your body is like, oh no, I don't care what society is saying. I don't care what, get that mask away from me. I don't care what the mask says. I'm your body. I like this. And the bully whip holder is like, no, we're not going to be with that in our life. We'll lose all emotional validation. Our mother will be scandalized. Our friends will be like, what are you doing? You could do so much better than him. And you have to go back and do the thing where you check all the boxes. And you end up whipping your body like a pack mule to get on with it, to force fit it into this template, right? And then, all kinds of things will happen. I mean, literally sexual blockage will happen. Like sexual pleasure will not flow often in those cases. So it is this dichotomy between like what you actually like and what you actually want, and what you whip yourself into like convincing yourself that you actually like and want. So when you say you're a perfectionist, I would say a perfectionist, like who, like the book, the standard of scales and weights and measures, the benchmarks by which you measure perfection. It's like, where did you even get those? Like, who issued? Look underneath. Like, where was it? Was it made in what culture? Was it issued by your family? Right? Because if there is a perfection, that standard is often coming from the outside. Right? And if it doesn't fit with what your actual desires are, then, and that's true for like 99% of people, right? Then, I mean, there's a healing and bliss task to be done, right? Okay. Thank you for asking that question, and I hope that was helpful. All right, let's keep going. So, of course, I'm falling behind again. Let me see. Well, I guess it's not the end of the world if I save some questions for next session. Let me just try to power through these. Okay, this question. So, hey, Artie, why do I always feel like crying when I feel most alive? The wave, the sparkle, the channel, the flood of the golden thread makes me want to cry. Connection to sacred space can often overwhelm me, and then I tighten and disconnect. Some fear of the unknown, lack of control. Can you speak to this? Yes, I can absolutely speak to this. So when you have this flood of the golden thread come through you, there will be a huge flood and upwelling of emotion. You feel like crying, but you're like, when I feel most alive. So these like tears of joy, right? This is absolutely a thing. Not for everyone, but for many people, like us, this is absolutely a thing. So I'm like this. I was in this thing in January in Essex, like outside of London, in January, February, right before the pandemic. And we were in this thing with other people like me, which I won't qualify any further. Other people like me, and we did this funky exercise where we were like what they called working with spirit. And we did these exercises where we would literally sit in sacred space, but then do these additional bonkers exercises where we would open ourselves further to invite and allow spirit, past our defenses and in us to like flow through us, like hardcore golden thread stuff. I mean, they use completely different language, and it was kind of for a different thing. But they were, let me shut this one here. And we would do this exercise where we would open and let it through and then close it and keep it out so that you could viscerally in your body feel the difference. And so when I did it and spirit was like flooding through me, they're like, look for the physical changes so And I was like, and we all had our eyes closed. And when spirit would flow through me, like tears would just start streaming down my face. Like not sad, it was like happy, like flood of uncontrollable emotion. Like I don't really remember. It would just, tears would start like flowing down my face. And the group lead, like, started guffawing in the middle of like, we were all closing our eyes. And I'm like, oh, Jesus. And when we did the debrief, the group leader was like, well, we've definitely got one over there. I was like, yeah, it's me. So another way of saying it is that emotion, feeling, is a force of amplification across the veil between the world's realms of the visible and invisible. Right, that's why when we talked about honoring the dead last session, that's why we say when mourning the dead, you do not want to suppress your emotion. Right? If you're like, ideally, like in a modern Western funeral, everyone's like, shh, don't cry, right? Too loudly. But ideally, you're on your hands and knees, like, wailing and screaming out your rage. And in ancient Greco-Roman society, right, in the ancient world, you needed that. The dead needed that wind, the power of that amplifying emotion to go across the veil of the visible and invisible, to like fill their sails so they could make it to the land of the ancestors, right? I mean, these are all metaphorical kind of, but the physics are basically no different from tradition to tradition. And so for me, when you are in the flow and you're feeling the surge of emotion, you want to be in sacred space, right? I mean, that's obvious, right? You want to be in sacred space, alone in your room with the door closed. No one's going to bother you for half an hour. And then you get into the golden thread and you will start crying and sobbing, right? And because you're in sacred space, you can practice allowing the emotion to come out fuller and fuller, right? This is not a thing where it's like, this modern kind of wellness thing where it's like, oh, you should be in touch with your emotions and it's okay to let it flow and everything. It's like, no. It's like, I mean, that is part of it, but it's also largely that, yeah, this is coming out of you for a reason, right? When you let the golden thread flow through you, the way it like bursts through the veil into you and through you is through emotion. So when you cinch that down, you cinch down the power. If you have a whipper inside of you that's like, no, we're not okay with emotion, then that's a conversation to have with him and healing process, et cetera, et cetera. But just to step back, what I'm saying is there's nothing wrong with you, right? There's nothing wrong that the emotion wells up, and there's nothing wrong that your first instinct in this world of 99% profane is to like squeeze it down and stuff it down, right? That's what we're taught. That's what we were all taught. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with you, and I'm just describing the physics so you can kind of go in and start tinkering around and playing. It's exciting. What else did I write here? Yeah, so when you're in deep connection with the muse, let it flow. Have a piece of paper, just barf it out all on paper, whatever's coming to you, even the tears, because you're so emotional, you'll forget when you come out of the room, right? So you want to document it somehow. The best dreams are when you wake up in tears. The best movies make you cry, right? It's not a sign of weakness, as we've been taught in the world of fear, threat, and control and the profane, but a sign of power flowing through you, right? When I'm in a session like this, I'll often feel huge surges of emotion, and I will need to slow down in order to not have tears start coming out in the middle of the session, because it'll start freaking people out. But like when I'm in Essex, right, as an example, it's a very private sanctuary space. It's all like people like me, and they know the physics of this, and it's okay to do that. And so your golden thread is encoded in your emotion and your bliss. Okay, your meaning and purpose of life, your personal power, everything is encoded in your emotion, what we call your emotion and feeling. This is where the muse comes from. This is where the vision comes from. It is on the river of your emotion and feeling that all these things come through, which is why you can always trust it, right? Feeling never lies, right? Your body never lies, right? When you walk into a room and it's like, oh, I should not be in here, you should just turn around and leave. And if afterwards the thinking mind is like, oh, you're just being like too sensitive and everything, fine, whip away, baby, whip away, right? When my body says turn around and leave, I turn around and leave. So sue me. Okay. Feeling never lies. Thinking always lies. Thinking always lies. For valid reasons, the whipper is trying to protect you in its own well-meaning way, but just kind of fumbling it. Because when the whipper is not guided by the vision, it will overdo it. And that's just physics. That's okay. But because of that, for most of us, you can't trust thinking. Thinking always lies. If thinking is guided by vision, then you don't need to worry about trusting thinking. Thinking is the slave. Thinking is the CEO. Go implement this, implement that. The vision is telling you what to do. In the absence of vision, thinking is just like this mouse on a hamster wheel, right? I mean, I grew up all around people from Harvard and Stanford, and what I can tell you is any of them can tell you, right? Super strong thinkers, not in touch with their feeling and inner feminine and emotion and vision, can rationalize them into doing just about anything, right? As debaters, they can debate both sides of a problem, like lawyers, right, just as easily. And there's no vision saying, well, you could do that, but one side is right because it's just right. Totally cut off from what they actually feel. It's comical, but often really painful. So that's my idea, my brainstorm, to practice that, holding space for your feeling. And over time, your muscles will get stronger, right? You'll have a stronger cup or pipe, right? To hold the fire of your feeling coming through, so that the cup, the portal opening in you, doesn't melt when the fire comes through, and you can hold space for it, and then over time, more and more can flow through you, right? Where it's not that you control it, but that you give it this container to, like, it's like you're putting this pipe in between, through the veil of the visible and invisible, and then you become a very powerful person, because it's not your power, it's not your personal individual power, it's the power flowing through you, right? And everybody around you feels that. It's da qi, to use somebody else's term. And then you'll really have it, right? It will be really obvious at that point what your deepest desires are, right? The voice of the girl dancing on the ocean shore alone, dreaming of lovers, will become this like gale force wind. This warm sort of but very strong gale force wind flowing through you, and you will be unstoppable. You will be unstoppable. Okay. Okay, there's 2 more questions. Let's just go a little over. Let's like knock these out. I don't want to make you wait any longer. Okay, so hey Artie, could you give more examples of creating sacred space while doing other things or around other people? I do 0-minute meditation. Good job. I'm glad you have that in your toolkit right now. So I do 0-minute meditation and understand having it sort of running in the background, no fear, threat, or control. But no fear, threat, or control requires a lot of focus and maybe hiding to attain. For instance, I have a neighbor who's tormenting me, often all night long, with a pounding bass vibration from her TV and stereo. It occurred to me to ask myself if she was an aspect of my inner feminine bully. That's like vocabulary we use from 7-Day Healing. Sorry about that. And I try to have a conversation with my inner feminine bully. But it was impossible because this woman doesn't care about me at all. That made me realize she wasn't an aspect of my inner feminine, because my inner feminine cares about me. She, the outer, is an aspect of my real female mother, who doesn't care about me, and I was reacting to her similarly. I don't know what to do with all this. How do I maintain sacred space in the face of this like booming, physically disruptive stimulus? Okay, so so this is more of a healing specific question. What I want to do is I want to just kind of hit this really quickly. But if you have a follow-on deeper healing question, I would like post it to live group advising, and then you have access to the archive and all the rest of it. So just really quickly, there are different aspects of inner feminine. And if she reflects your mom, then definitely she is an aspect of inner feminine, right? So there's an aspect that cares about you, and there's an aspect that sort of seemingly doesn't care about you. So I would do the things we talk about in day 3 of 7-Day Healing. I would do the full interview. She's clearly here asking for attention. And even in the form of the outer woman sort of disrupting you with a physical kind of outward stimulus. So I have an example of an advisee in Italy. If you've been in live group advising, you've been following this, right, for the last couple months. Before the pandemic, she had upstairs neighbors. One of them was actually a student of hers, and they were like really loud with TV and everything. She talked to them, they didn't do anything. And she was actually like, this is a student of mine. I could like, you know, if I were not high integrity, I could like mess with her and threaten her with like docking her grade if she didn't like knock this off. Not that I would do that, but it's like, why is she so like obtuse, right? And then she did her inner interviews anyway, and all this stuff happened in healing. I didn't get an update for a while, and then lockdown happened. And then my memory's fuzzy, but I was like, oh my gosh, you know, the upstairs neighbors, what happened? She's like, oh, no, those, they're gone. And I don't remember if they sheltered somewhere else or they got moved out or kicked off, but it was like, they just disappeared. So basically, like with this woman advisee, basically what happened is the pandemic moved in, and one of the side effects of the pandemic, I hope it was just a side effect, I hope it wasn't the whole point of the pandemic, was to clear these neighbors out right? To change her outer reflection after she healed the inner, the outer always changes. It has to realign. Your outer always reflects your inner. So when she did the healing, there's like, they had to be out, and the pandemic came in and just like flushed them out. So when I heard that, I was like, dang, woman. Remind me never to piss you off. So anyway, there's a side point here. This is total nerdy indulgence, and we're over time already, but I hope you will forgive me. When you have powerful manifestors around you, and people are not always, they're like go in phases, right? I have the honor and privilege of having a lot of people I advise who end up after, being in live group advising for like months and years, where they get a feel for this, and they end up like they heal something within them, and the outer world changes like within a day. I mean, this past Friday's live group advising, for those of you who know John, the radiologist, it's like he got into that competitive program within like 24 hours. Anyway, what I'm realizing now is that because I have powerful manifestors around me, I can use them as bellwethers, right? Because whenever something happens within them, the outer world is going to snap to form around their pattern or archetype. So this advisee from Italy on Friday was like, oh, by the way, this whole thing with Russia and my granduncle, and you can just like listening, you can feel the power like coalescing around her, right? And she was like, yeah, this whole pattern around the Russian part of my ancestry and everything, and I think I'm gonna like suit up to really sort of heal this and like take a crack at for like all of my past ancestors. I would. I'm feeling the power. I'm going to sort of give this a try. And I was like, whoa, okay. And this is the pandemic, right? So I'm seeing all this power coalesce around her. And then she mentions offhand, oh yeah, and by the way, I'm actually scheduled to be in Russia in the fall. So that will be a good time for me to like look into this ancestry. And I was like, really? It was like, you're going to be, she's in Italy. It's like, you're going to be in Russia in the fall. So I'm thinking, because she's a powerful manifestor, that's obviously going to happen, which means travel restrictions will be lifted by the fall, which means airlines will be. And I'm like, so my follow-on question was like, so when exactly are you scheduled to be in Russia? Exactly when in the fall? And I'm getting ready to like call my stockbroker to like start buying airline stocks right before. So I'm just kidding. But the fascinating thing here is that it's not that she's causing it, right? It's nothing so profane and linear like that. But rather that when a person is that deep in the flow, she is in line with the deeper flow of, call it the world. And so she's like this fishing, floating bob thing, right? And when she's in the flow, you can see the pattern of the undercurrent by looking at her. Right. And it's just like totally fantastic, for me, relatively new phenomenon, because the people I've been working with are just like, many of them are like just coming fully into their power in this way. And it's just, it's breathtaking. And then you mentioned you were doing 0-minute meditation. Which is fantastic. Good job. And the only thing I want to say there is, so ZM is mainly good for making healing easier and for making bliss easier. Because with that skill, you can retreat into the sacred at any time, even in the middle of like doing stuff. Okay. But in addition, as you're healing, you are expanding the precinct of the sacred itself. Okay, so you are expanding the temple itself. So in your case, as you're reconciling with your inner feminine, the inner mom, inner annoying neighbor, inner feminine, the outer then will also self-resolve. So the neighbor will stop, or you'll talk to them or whatever, or you'll move out. Something will happen where the outer will naturally reflect the inner once the inner is reconciled. And there's all kinds of soothing, all kinds of symbolism around like the nature of the inner feminine issue, because this inner feminine is not directly in your face. She's in her own space, soothing and distracting herself without regard for others. And all of this can be symbolism. You could read it, the whole situation, as a dream, right? And I don't want to get into that now. We're already over time. But that's my quick take on your question. And then the next level of question you have to ask, if you have a next level question, I would post that to live group advising for next Friday. And we can go deeper there. But honestly, you don't have to. You already have all your 7-day healing skills. I would just hit it with the day 3 process and then see what happens from there. Okay, so I hope that was helpful, and thank you for sharing the question. Let's see. Okay, so there's one more question, and then we'll go into our exercise. Okay, so not too bad, not too bad. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so this last question, more on the nature of the Muse and removing obstacles to higher guidance in sacred space. Hey, Artie, thank you as always for creating this community and space. This and live advising are the bright spots that help me through the week. Thank you. Like the stretch of candles in a dark forest. They light up enough of the path to see from one step to the next. I love that. Thank you for that image. Though the destination remains obscure, of course, right? It's a labyrinth. You can't see around the turns. In my own path, the Muse, the voice of higher guidance, creativity, inspiration, and illumination, seems to have retreated further into the shadows. Okay. Dreams have shut down. Downloads have fizzled to barely enough spark to see the trees before fizzling out again. Some of my creative friends, writers primarily, have expressed the same feeling of stasis, ineffectiveness, sudden shutting off of the tap of the creative tap. Now, without letting go of the golden thread in this case, we seem to have lost it. To help shed some light, I've been listening to a few of your sessions on the nature of the Muse, and I hear that she is at once part of me, has a seat on the board, and is also not me. And then in one session, you talk about grandiosity, daqi, the Chinese word daqi, and despicability of the Muse walking hand in hand down the path of artistry, creativity, and bliss. And it struck me that this concept of despicability could be both the obstacle on the path and the key to its opening. And both these concepts seem to be distinct from our common understanding of the terms. If you have time, and not too much of a backlog already, no, that's great. Could you talk more about the nature of the Muse, how to receive her guidance in sacred space, and what obstacles, inner and outer, may be seeking removal? In particular, this thing called despicability. Okay. And if it's simply too much for, say, 1,000 sessions, could you provide any links to where you talk more on this topic? Okay, thank you for this question. This is a powerful question. Okay, so I love talking about the Muse, as you know. So first of all, the easy question. So for the other Muse items in the archive, just search for Muse. The search function in live is work again. You'll maybe get 6 additional items there, I think. Now, we don't have time for me to get fully into what I talk about when I talk about grandiosity and despicability and da qi, like big qi. Qi is like the qi of qigong and tai chi. This is a big flow of qi, like this big flow of golden thread, versus xiao qi, which is small qi, which is more like, you know, clenching down and cutting off the golden thread. So da qi, the closest English word to da qi, which doesn't quite do it justice either, is grandiosity, which in most uses in the profane, in the Western profane, is an insult, right? It's like, oh, you're so grandiose, and they say that as a bad thing. Okay. So I won't get into the whole grandiosity talk here, But to answer your question, the thing that goes hand in hand with grandiosity is despicability. They are each intrinsic to the other. It's not like despicability is the oyster shell that you want to open and throw away for the oyster and pearl of grandiosity. No, they are two sides of the same coin. You cannot have one without the other, latent in you. Okay. And both then are intrinsic aspects of the golden thread. What I mean by this is the guidance of the divine, the golden thread, is not always in line with the guidance of the profane and what the mask is telling you you're supposed to do. Often it is in direct opposition to the mask, right? And so you think about it, if I'm getting divine guidance, that alone will make me despicable in the eyes of others because everyone else will feel left out, right? That's the first level. But then the next level, level 2 is, well, if I tell them, well, no, we all get this divine guidance. You can get it too. It's not just me, it's you. Then I'm even more despicable because then I'm making you all feel like dumbasses for not knowing that. Right now, I don't think that. You all think that. I mean, there's these imaginary people I'm talking about. They all think that because they're in the realm of the profane. So they're in fear, threat, and control. The minute there's something divine that they're missing out on, they instantly start whipping themselves. And they mark me as despicable for making them feel that way. And then the third level of despicability, but wait, there's more, is when I'm like, you guys, no, right? It's not like that at all, right? Let me help you so that you can see that you can get the divine guidance on. You can get the golden thread on your own. And then even at that third level, I'm still despicable because I opened your eyes to divine guidance, and now you can't unsee it. Because often the divine guidance, if you're deep into profane, will tell you, one way or another, you need to blow up some aspect of your regular life in order to follow this divine guidance. And it's terrifying. It's terrifying. I'll just leave this out there as a golden thread. I know I don't know who it is, but it's for someone. But in the Joycean conception of art, proper art and improper art, aesthetic arrest, all of that. When he describes terror, he says that it is from the secret cause, right? And the archetype that is given to you through divine guidance is this secret cause. Okay. And maybe I'll explain that in a future session. So this despicability never ends, right? If you see someone who's grandiose in the flow of their divine sort of golden thread or whatever, you feel left out, and then you feel like a dumbass, and then you feel terrified that you will need to blow up your life too in order to follow the golden thread in you. So that's why you don't want to see it. That's why you don't want to see it, right? And what are those three things? You feel left out, fear. You feel like a dumbass, threat. I'm a dumbass for not knowing. And then third, you feel terrified that you will need to blow up your life. You loss of control. Fear, threat, and control are the basis of the feeling of despicability. It's not something to be removed. It's something that will happen. The profane will always see the grandiose as despicable for those three reasons, right? Fear, threat, and control. So the grandiose of the sacred is always viewed as despicable by the advocates of the profane. Because the grandiose of the sacred evaporates the fear, threat, and control. It evaporates the profane. And often when you embrace not just the grandiosity, but the despicability of the golden thread as well, that is when the juice starts flowing again. And for me, I mean, in terms of just, I always prefer more grandiosity than less, right? Because if you really do have too much grandiosity, you can always cut it back, right? But if you don't have enough, nothing else in the world, especially in the profane world, is going to fill that hole of deficiency. Right? It's like raising a girl in our patriarchal society. When I raised my daughter, she's 19 now, our daughter, right? I was like, it's all about self-esteem. More self-esteem is key, right? And she definitely has more than enough self-esteem. And I honor her, right? But the analogy I used to use when she was in like second or third grade, when she was like 7 or 8 years old, was it's like in the old days before refrigeration technology, in the 1800s, when they would tow ice from the Arctic down to Boston to sell ice because there was no refrigeration. And the way they would calculate how much ice to tow would be they would figure out how much ice they needed to deliver in Boston. And then they would calculate how much bigger of an iceberg they needed to like calve off and tow down with their boats. Because on the way, there was a predictable level of meltage that would happen, right? So you always have more grandiosity than you need. You always overload grandiosity because the rest of the world will always chip away at it. And then if you've done your calculations right, you end up with about the right amount. But if there's not enough ice, you show up in Boston towing water, you can't fix that. Until maybe, you know, you meet a guy like me and I put you back in the sacred and you get your tank filled again, right? But from within you, not from me. Or the fuel, you know this, but the fuel is not from me. It's from within you. I'm just reminding you how to operate the gas pump again. Because it's been so long. And so for you, the one asking the question specifically, and she's an advisee, so I'll just speak to her directly for a little bit. I mean, how despicable are you right now? Quite despicable from the eyes of the profane, right? And the inner bully and the inner whipper. You're sitting in comfort in your home in Costa Rica, far away from all the people you're supposed to be taking care of now and people pleasing and having no boundaries with right now. The house sale is in limbo. You're not doing anything. You're not even writing your novel. All you're doing is only just sitting on the couch, doing nothing. I mean, not actually, but let's just say for the sake of the profane argument, you're doing nothing while the rest of the world burns and you lift not a finger to help. How despicable. And yet, why are you just sitting there on the couch doing nothing? Right? You're doing that because the Muse told you to sit there. That's it. You are being despicable because the Muse told you to do that. Oh, how grandiose. Who does she think she is? Despicability, grandiosity, hand in hand. Voila. All great artists know this and embrace it. It's not a question of whether it's right or wrong. It is. The golden thread is not right or wrong. It is. Picasso, Van Gogh, Hemingway, Plath, Woolf, Kahlo, all grandiose and all despicable from the point of view of the profane in their own unique fingerprint way. And yet, how precious and few they are. Right? We always say, if only we had more Picassos. But the rest of us are terrified to embrace our inner grandiosity, attend this fully, because it means you embrace the despicability too. And what that means is exile. Right? So you're like, well, the Muse is shut off the top. She isn't telling me what to do. And what you mean by that is I'm not writing as productively. Well, the Muse doesn't just write. Right? The Muse is not shut off the tap. She is telling you what to do. She is telling you what to do. You just don't want to do it because it makes you despicable. She is telling you, as we've said in past sessions, and this is just between me and her, she's telling you to sit your ass on the couch and cook and circumambulate and reconcile with that voice that says you are nothing. And frankly, I mean, when you put it that way, I totally agree with her. I mean, it's just logistics. It's not even spiritual. I mean, how can we continue with your work, with all the stuff she still has to send through you, right? With that voice of you are nothing still persistently there, right? How are we going to do that? It's not right or wrong. It's just like, we got to get this boulder out of the way for the river to continue. It's just physics. So, I mean, just sitting there doing nothing, right? Cooking, circumambulating, it's torturous. I know it's torturous, but I mean, logistically, it kind of makes sense that that's what she's asking for. And it makes perfect sense why you are wriggling and trying to get out of it, because it is so uncomfortable, right? Pressure and inescapable containment, which then, as we've said from the past sessions, then leading to your transformation as an artist and as a woman. And I honor you. Right? What else can I say but like, I honor you, because despicable or not, you're still doing it. Right? So I honor you. All right. So good job. I hope that was helpful. And thank you for sharing this question. All right. The golden thread, calling the flow. I would go back a couple sessions where we spent like an hour talking about the golden thread, but it's back there for sure. And thank you for the question. So the last two things I want to do with the time we have is I want to give you the suggested sacred space exercise for the coming week. And then we'll have a short poem, and then we'll close the session. Let's shift here. So the exercise I'll suggest for this week is for you to actually, as I said in the beginning of the session, to ask yourself the bliss question. To ask yourself the bliss question. I would keep a little notebook with you, or a note in your notepad on your phone. And the question is, what is it that you love to do? Right? What do you desire? What do you care about? Right? In life, what is the most beautiful thing for you? And then probably most effectively when you're in moments of sacred space, in the shower, driving, sitting in the car after you've parked, meditating, however you do sacred space, to see what whispers you hear. Now, when you ask a question like this, the usual suspects, the big things will come through first, and that's fine. It's like, oh, my purpose in my life is my children, they're my everything, or social justice, or music, and okay, so that's good. So put those on the list. Great. And then you just kind of like, those are valid, but like, okay, now you all settle down, go take a seat. You're in, you're accepted. So no need to fuss anymore. Now, what else, right? Who else is back there? Come on forward, right? And so after the big ones come through, you wait for the continued whisper. And then listen for the little glimmers of the softer things, the whispers of the things you may have forgotten, the things that you may have been told by others or yourself early in life that are forbidden to you. Right? And there may be something, a whisper in the back of the room, right, of the dark room that you're trying to get them to come forward. And as soon as they come forward, the whipper comes up and says, no, that's off limits. I'm putting my foot down. This Artie stuff is great, but I have to put my foot down somewhere. That was fine for them, but not for you, and then it's just like, put the whip down, go chill out. It's all right. And you pull those forward and put them down on your notepad as well. And that's it, right? You just put them down on the notepad. That's it. No fear, threat, and control. In other words, there's no work plan. There's no goals. There's no, oh, this is a surge of a new initiative for me. No business plan, no action plan. No. For this exercise. This exercise is only just to bring them forward, back into writing, back into your little notebook, back into your pocket, and that's it. No further action. Okay? It's just asking the question and letting it cook and listening for the whisper. So I would Give that a try if you want, only if you want. See how it feels to have those whispers back in your pocket again. Okay. Recovered and coaxed back forward from deep within the precincts of the sacred. Okay. And then to ask yourself when you do that and you've been sitting with them for a while, how does that feel? How does that feel? And I'd be very interested in your experience. So just email me with any updates. Okay. And I'd love to hear from you. All right. So that's the exercise. And go ahead and give that a try this week if you want. If you want. Okay. And then the last but not least, let's have our poem. So I just picked a very short poem today. I figured we would be running over. I apologize. But this is a poem that is very, very dear to me. It's a poem originally in Spanish by Juan Ramon Jimenez, translated by Robert Bly. Juan Ramon Jimenez was a Spanish poet, first half of the 20th century, Nobel Prize winner, 1956 for literature. Just amazing. And so I'll read it twice as I usually do, but honestly, even on the first reading, it doesn't need much commentary. And I chose this poem because it just speaks to me so deeply of the golden thread and the whisper of bliss. And even the golden thread that is our immortality that we talked about last week when we talked about honoring the dead. It is to me a poem that touches the jugular of the sacred self, the true self. And this poem is called, in English, I'll read the English, I am not I. I am not I. I am not I. I am this one, walking beside me, whom I do not see, whom at times I manage to visit, and whom at other times I forget, who remains calm and silent while I talk, and forgives gently when I hate, who walks where I am not, who will remain standing when I die. That's it. So that gives me at least the feeling of the golden thread and the whisper of bliss of your true nature, like some girl's breathing who dances alone by the ocean shore, dreaming of lovers. And when you ask your deep inner self, what is my desire? The exercise we just suggested. This is the part of you that you're asking, right? The one you really are. When he says, I am not I, right? The one you actually are. This is the part you ask. That is the sacred you, the part, as he says, who will remain standing when I die. The golden thread is another name for it. All right, should we have it again? Let's have it again. Read it the second time. I am not I. I am not I. I am this one, walking beside me, whom I do not see, whom at times I manage to visit, and whom at other times I forget, who remains calm and silent while I talk, and forgives gently when I hate, who walks where I am not, who will remain standing when I die. Thank you. All right. So now I will close the session. Our next session is next Sunday. Feel free to invite others. It's free. It's open to everyone. And please ask a lot of questions. So I've cleared the backlog. There's no more questions. So please ask more. Otherwise, it's going to be a really short session. And to get to it, it's like big green button that you have on your panel to sign up for the next Sunday session. All right. So I'll close the session. I hereby close the session of our shared sacred space. Thank you for holding this space with me, and thank you for sharing the nourishment, the emotional nourishment, the spiritual nourishment of this shared sacred space with me. I give you my blessing. Go in peace, bestowed with blessing, free of fear, free of threat, and the undue control of others. Have a great day. Have a great week. And I will see you all in the next session. Thank you. Thank you.